Hi, I'm Peggy Farron, and we are live with the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. Welcome to episode number 92. Stay tuned after our announcements for today's guest, underwater photographer Craig Dietrich. If you've ever wanted to learn about underwater photography, Craig is the guy. He's going to teach us some tips. Our motto at Understand Photography is we simplify the technical. So if you're the type of person who likes things shown to you in a step-by-step manner, you are going to love our classes. We try to start everyone out with a 4 weeks to proficiency in photography, where we're going to teach you to shoot in manual in the very first class. And again, we're going to make it simple. We also have some Lightroom and Photoshop classes online. Joe Fitzpatrick teaches Lightroom like you wouldn't believe. He makes it so much easier. He has two classes. One is called Getting Started with Lightroom, and the other one is about Lightroom, understanding Lightroom folders, collections, catalogs. That, to me, is the hardest part of Lightroom, and Joe really makes it easier. He has a series of short little videos, like they're like 2 to 5 minutes each, so you learn a little, practice a little, learn a little, practice a little. So check them out, understandphotography.com. All of our online classes are on sale for the summer, so you're going to get them at rock bottom prices, and you get to keep them for life. And by life, I mean the life of my business, but hopefully that's a long time. So thanks for watching the Understand Photography Show. We are live on our Facebook page, facebook.com/understandphotography. Then we put this on YouTube and on iTunes as a podcast. So today we're going to talk with Craig Dietrich. Craig has traveled extensively all over the world with his camera and his dive equipment. He has captured spectacular images both above and under the water, won all kinds of awards. He's sold in galleries from coast to coast. He does art fairs. He's a very successful artist at this point. So welcome, Craig.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Craig Dietrich, Diet Rich.
That's me.
Love that you said that on your video, because it makes it so easy to think about how to spell your name. Diet Rich, Dietrich.
Thank you.
Now, one thing I cannot forget to tell everybody is that you are having a keynote speech tomorrow at our local college at Florida Southwestern. Oh crap! What the heck is the name of the college?
FSU. Florida Southwestern University.
And Joe is making it worse because he's given me the wrong name. It's Florida Southwestern State College, Collier County Campus. Okay, Florida Southwestern State College, Collier County Campus.
I knew you were going to.
Oh, I knew it was in there. I just couldn't remember the name of it because it used to be called Edison Community College, and they changed the name just to confuse. Yeah, I know. But you're speaking from 9 a.m. to noon, and you're speaking about underwater photography, correct? So it's a 3-hour lecture with a break. You'll please give us a break. 3 hours is a long time.
Give you a break.
And it's free to the Camera Club members, or if you want to join the Camera Club, it's only $30 a year. So the Camera Club has a strange name. We call it DPSIG. So it's DPI-SIG.org is their website. But you can just show up. Show up at the auditorium at Florida Southwestern State College, Collier Campus, tomorrow before 9 o'clock, because he goes on at 9. And for $30 a year, you can come to all the lectures that DPSIG offers. So it's a really, really great camera club. And then you'll get to see Craig for only $30.
Okay. I will promise you one thing, that if it's your first one that you're coming to, it'll be a memorable one.
Awesome. Well, I
put on a pretty good show.
And you were highly, highly recommended. So I'm excited. I'm excited that you're here on my show, too. So let's talk about, how did you get into underwater photography in the first place?
Actually, that's a great question. For me, it was the love of scuba diving and the passion for photography that I've had since high school. So the scuba diving came much later. I'm very scared of water.
I'm terrified to scuba dive.
I just wasn't something that I ever thought was on my radar. And then when I did finally get into it because of a girl, I ended up it changed my life from the minute I hit the water. I quit my job, became a scuba instructor, and really got into scuba diving and taught it and loved it. And then reality sets back in, and then you go back to a job, and then you realize that somewhere in there you're going to try to make it happen again, that you can carve out something for yourself. And I've been a photographer my whole life, and I finally took a huge risk and tried to combine the two together.
And so far it's
And
worked
here I
out.
am.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing 8 years. I
Wow.
mean, just a very incredible journey. And then, but for me, to be where I am now is just I feel like I'm just getting started. I have so much more to see, and then I want to really just keep going with getting my name out there and building the art side of what I do.
Now, most of your income is from selling your artwork, right?
It is 90% of my income,
Yeah.
which is, and then I do teach. And for me, it's the teaching side of it is, I just love photography. So if you want to talk photography, I'm your guy. So, you know, you have a sport like underwater photography that is extremely expensive. I don't know how else to say it.
I
There is
can't even
no
imagine, because photography.
there's no way around it, and you have people who will invest in this, you know, this passion that they have, and then they hit the water, and then they realize, like, oh my God, you know, this is not going to solve your issue. You know, you could spend $20,000 on a setup, and it's not going to take the picture for you. And then they turn to me and say, you know, hey, can you help me? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. And so I teach underwater photography privately in Jupiter, Florida, and then I'm also work for Blue Water Photo out of California, and then they send me on trips where I'm on a liveaboard and we're doing photo workshops while we're scuba diving, and that's kind of cool.
And a liveaboard, what
Yeah,
is
liveaboard is where you go out on the boat and you're just diving and you're way away from land, and you live on the boat and you're diving 5 times a day. So it's amazing because I can do a class at night and then we go and dive, and you know, it goes right into like, hey, this is how you do it, and then we dive 5 times. The next night I can look at their work. So I can take somebody that's got major issues, and within a week, you know, they're just like, woo, you know, they're having a blast. And
Now, the boat is big enough to
Yeah.
give classes?
oh yeah,
How
it's
many
a
people are on this
25
boat?
people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a big boat. Big boats.
Well, I guess
So-
it'd have to be if you're going to be out there
Yeah.
in the ocean
Yeah,
somewhere.
it's amazing. It's for me, again, I'm not, you know, I'm not there to get a tan. I want to scuba dive, and when you really want to dive, there's nothing better than just waking up and go diving. Then you have breakfast, then you dive, and then you have lunch, and then you dive, and then you dive again, and then you have dinner, and then you probably dive again after that. So it's the perfect world. But for me, as a, you know, when I'm teaching, it's just a perfect environment to really, like I said, it's like this little, I have them. They, you know, I can teach them, and then they just go apply exactly what I just told them to go do. And so it
That's awesome.
really takes that learning curve and makes it very,
Now,
we can get a lot done.
Are they mostly experienced scuba
Scuba diver.
divers? So
That's
you don't
another
have
good
to worry
question.
about
That's
them
not my
dying?
worry. Is I teach them. I teach them the photography part. Even though I'm an instructor, I'm not. They have dive masters on board that will be the ones that make sure that they come back up. My job is the photography side of it, and that's even though I would be happy to. But when you shoot, I'm very clear with people. You know, in diving, you have what's called a dive buddy that looks out for you, and you know, when you have a camera, it's like my shirt says, I am not a good dive buddy, because you're focusing on what you're doing, and it's, you know, your attention is not on safety. You're just paying attention to what you're doing. So that's why I tell everybody, you know, when we hit the water, it's, you know, remember you have to be you have to take care of your dive skills.
So
first.
the first advice is to go
Learn how to dive.
Learn how to dive, and then go with a dive buddy who's not taking pictures. Right?
Exactly. And we call them pointers, or they help us. Like, so they point. Like they'll
see a fish.
They'll see, exactly, and that's really wonderful. I have another set of eyes that can help you and say, hey, look, and they wave
And
you
then they're
over.
also going to
Yeah, and
say,
then they're
hey, you've
also
been down here long
exactly,
enough.
and they're watching out for you. So it really helps out very well. It's funny, when I travel, I'm the luckiest guy ever, because I find the best, you know, dive buddies, because they're just like, what do you do? I'm going to take pictures, and I'll share them with you if you watch my back. Okay, you know, and it's great because I have. I even was lucky enough in Australia. I had 2 camera systems, so she carried the one camera system while I shot the other one. And I never met this woman, and she was the nicest person ever, and she was fantastic for the whole week. She
That's
carried
awesome.
my extra hair.
Yeah, your own underwater Sherpa. It's not as heavy underwater though, right?
There's a lot going on there. My camera system has a name. We call it the Beast.
The
Because
Beast.
it is just, it's massive. And you have to understand that you're dealing with currents, and it's all drag. So it can be a little bit of a handful.
See, I've never dived. I don't know anything about diving,
Yeah.
so I might ask you a lot of stupid
That's
questions.
okay. They're not.
So what does the Beast consist of? What kind
you
of
have
camera?
the housing.
Okay.
You have the dome port, then you have arms and 2 strobes.
Okay, so what kind of camera?
So I shoot that Canon 7D Mark II.
And
So regular camera,
Okay.
underwater housing.
the underwater housing, that's like $2,000 or something, right? For
I used one.
Oh,
They're more
really?
like 3,500, and it's like buying a car with no tires and no windows.
So you
and
have
no
to
steering
extras
wheel.
that you have
yeah,
to
you have
pay
to
for.
now you have to put on the ports. You have
Now,
to
what's
buy-
a port?
A port means what lens you're going to shoot. Then you have to put on the accommodating port to match that.
Oh
so
my
you not only have
gosh.
you have to buy flat ports. So each lens that you have is going to have a different port.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that adds up. And the port, like a good dome, is another $1,200 just for the.
And what's the dome?
I'm sorry. That's when you shoot a wide angle, you're going to shoot a dome. When you shoot macro, you're going to shoot a flat port. So each lens is going to take a different port. So when I travel with a wide angle lens, which means I need a dome for that. And then I travel with a 60 millimeter macro and a 100 millimeter macro. So I need 2 different flat ports for each to match that.
But you have to make a decision before you go down which one
That's
you're
a very
using,
good,
right?
That's a great point. That's actually, see you do, I'm serious, that was a really good pickup.
Well, you're not
because-
going to be changing lenses
Exactly,
underwater.
Exactly. And it's funny that you say that, because that's like the number one, here's the first like tip, you know, is where if you are going to be an underwater photographer and it's one of the most, classic mistakes that people will make, in the sense of you have to have the right lens for the job. And where people on land are used to these, telephoto lenses where they can,
Zoom.
what do they have? Like it's 18 to 500 or what?
Yeah.
It's like they got the lens that does everything. It's one lens and it does everything. It's like, and they're looking for that same lens to work underwater.
But you can't zoom underwater.
You can't zoom underwater. And so this idea of where you're shooting a small subject, but then they're worried about if the dolphin comes in. So they're trying to compensate for everything. And I try to explain to them is it doesn't work like when you have a lens, like a kit lens, like a 15 to 80, they're trying to use a lens that's macro and wide at the same time. But in reality, your macro's no good and your wide angle's no good, because you have to be specific to what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
And what I try to explain to them is, if you're shooting this beautiful little nudibranch and you have your macro lens up, which is obviously going to limit you to just small items or small subjects, and a dolphin, they say to me, well, what do you do if a dolphin comes up to you? And I say, you look at him and enjoy it. And then you go about your business and go back to shooting macro. I mean, it's just you have to be committed. You really want to make that commitment. And if you do, your work is going to show it right away. Because if you're committed, your macro is going to look like it's supposed to. And then when you commit to wide, your wide's going to look like it's supposed to. And the way it works in our world is when you go on these trips, it's pretty clear. You're going to the Philippines, it's macro. It's the macro capital. It's going to blow you away. You're going to be busy, macro, macro, macro.
Okay.
You go to another destination like Socorro, and it's wide angle. You're going to be dealing with giant Pacific manta rays that have 18-foot wingspans. You're going to be dealing with, dolphins, sharks, massive schools of sharks. So you're pretty clear when you go on this trip. You pretty
what
much
to bring
know
ahead
what
of
you're
time.
getting into. You're going on the trip, and So the trips are pretty. I'm doing a trip to the Sea of Cortez, and that's a rough one, because we're going to deal with, which is a good thing, but we're going to be dealing with whale sharks, so you need wide angle, but then there's tons of nudibranchs, so you're going to shoot macro. Then there's sea lions, so you're going to go back to your wide angle. So that's like a trip that there is a variety, which is pretty rare, but most trips are pretty specific to what you're
That's when you need
what
that
you're gonna
Sherpa to carry that extra
That is
camera.
And the other thing that will surprise people, when I talk about I talked about macro, you're looking at a 60 millimeter or 100 millimeter. For wide, this is always kind of throws my hardcore shooters for a loop, is because, they're either Canon or Nikon people, and when I tell them it's the Tokina 10-17, and they usually have a mild, like, they grab down to there, and, I don't put anything but Canon or Nikon glass, and I'm like, well, then good luck, because it's the right lens for the job. It's a lens that was created, before people realized, how much underwater photography was going to catch on, but it's just the perfect underwater lens. Like, it does everything right. So it's my whole portfolio. I'm a wide guy. I really love to tell a story, which is,
I've seen you have a lot of sharks.
I have a lot of wide images, and it's all done with my Tokina 10-17.
Wow.
And
but you can't zoom, right? So you decide
you
what you're
can
gonna...
zoom for that. It's actually giving you your degree of angle of coverage.
Okay.
So what that means is when I shoot at 10, it's actually a fisheye. So 90% of my portfolio is at 10. Which
Even on
means,
your crop frame camera.
Yep.
It's fishy.
Exactly.
It
gives you the fisheye. So you don't get that. On a full frame, you would get the black circle, but on the crop sensor, which works, that's why that lens is just absolutely perfect.
Wow.
For the, Canon came out with that 8-15, which is more for the full frame, and people are shooting, that's their lens to shoot for wide. But the Tokina has always been and always will be the lens of choice for the crop sensor for Nikon or Canon.
Oh, interesting.
So I get, the hardcore, Nikon guys, I think it's the 28, or, it's like, that's a wide angle lens, what's the problem? I'm like,
28,
because it's not wide enough, and that what
not
they
on
don't
a crop
understand,
frame especially.
Yeah, and what you don't realize, which is very interesting for what I do, is you have to be within 2 to 3 feet of your subject. So
because the water
yes,
makes it not
to cut
clear.
down that water column. I mean, it adds a lot to it. So that's your other very
2 to 3
important
feet
rule.
of your subject.
Yes. So when I say that, that's what really, when I teach it, it's very interesting, because people are, when I say 2 to 3 feet, they look at me and they say, oh yeah, I got it. And then when you see a turtle or you see the shark, they're 5 or 6 feet away, but they think they're like almost touching it, which they, they're pretty darn close, but they don't understand that. When
Yeah, because we're probably 4 feet right now, right?
And that's my point, is they're right there. That shark's right in front of them, but it's 4 feet or 5 feet away, and that's too far. When I say 2 to 3 feet, I mean you have to be in that 2 to 3 foot range.
So with the sharks, you're that close
Yes.
to them?
Yes.
And they come right up to you?
No, they do not come right up to you. That's the other
Well, it looks
portion
like
of my
it of
class
your...
that is extremely difficult, because the diving portion of what I do is extremely important. So we will have a meeting before we go in, and I'll say to them, when you see the turtle or you see the shark, relax, don't take off swimming towards it, just let it come to us, and I'll say, okay, and we get in the water, and right before we get in the water, I'll say one more time, remember, if you see the turtle, you see the shark, don't go, and so we go down, and I'll look to my right, and I'll see the turtle, and I'll go to tell them there's a turtle, and they're gone. They're already heading that way, and they're scared, So there's a true art form to what I do, is where you have to actually, your heart's beating very fast, you're very excited about what you're seeing, you want to get the shot, but you have to bridle that. You have to
understand the
back.
animal behavior
Exactly.
as well as everything
and that
else.
is actually where I really, really shine, because my learning technique was from being a dive instructor and working on a dive boat, where I would have my camera and I would go shoot, and all the fish would swim away from me, and then that would be in the morning, and then on the afternoon I would lead guided trips where I didn't have my camera, and I was actually in a safety position of where I was a good dive buddy, because now I'm paying attention and I'm responsible for 20 people to go scuba diving and make sure they come back up. So I'm in a different state of mind. I'm in the front showing them all the different places, and every fish would come right to me, and I'd be like, what the heck? So I would analyze myself and realize that when I had my camera, I was much more aggressive.
You were too eager.
And I just took that into, I'm always trying to look at what I could do to make myself better, and that was a huge like wake up call for me to be where I'm able to just really relax and willing to let that turtle swim away, even though I want to get the shot. I'm willing to sacrifice where I will take my time and take the chance that they're going to come to me and really take it easy, and then get myself in a position to shoot to where if it does come together, I'm ready, and then things can really happen in a good way. If you're constantly in that frame of mind where you're like, well, I'll just keep going, and then maybe 1 out of 20 that they'll stop or they won't swim away. Even when you do, when you're swimming towards them, they still have that apprehensive, like you're still putting them on edge. And to me, I think you can see it. When you look at my images, it's clear that the animal is comfortable with my presence. And I think that, to me,
that's really good advice.
If you are a portrait photographer, if you've ever met one, the idea is when you look at that image, the person in there should look relaxed and
not
comfortable.
scared.
Exactly, but I don't want my picture taken. I mean, it brings nerves, but if you have somebody on the other side of it that's a good photographer, what do? They get you to relax, they get you to calm down, and when you look at those images, the person looks relaxed and comfortable and looks their best. And by doing that for 18 years, I take that same, my mindset is, that's my subject. My job is to make them look, whether it's a turtle or shark, whatever it is, my mindset is still where it's like, my job is to make you look your very best. Now, the problem with that, it's hard to tell a great white what to do. They're very demanding, and they're very, so for me, it's like, I have to just kind of work, you're working, natural light, you're working your light, and you have to get the right angle and so it's extremely challenging, and for me, it's right up my alley. I really enjoy it.
Let me back up and go back to the equipment, because you said you also have to buy the arms. What's that?
Yes, ma'am, and that means you're shooting at a 180-degree angle of coverage, so you're shooting at a very wide angle, so you have to put arms on to get the strobes out far enough to come in so you can light the subject.
The arms are for the strobes.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay.
So when I'm holding my setup, they're 17 inches away from my housing.
And the strobes are connected with just a sync
fiber
cord,
optic cable. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
See, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So it's the same thing. It used to be hardwired, and now fiber optic's very popular. The reason why I like the fiber optic over the hard wire is the hard wires are very finicky, and you're very far away, and you just, finicky is not a, that's not a
you want something reliable.
So that's why people love fiber optic. I tell people, if you don't run over it with the lawnmower, it's going to work.
Okay.
And you even have a chance if you run over it, it's going to work. So that's why I'm a fiber optic guy.
So when you're teaching photography, you have to teach the people about their sync speed on their
That's
cameras,
correct.
because it's going to be 250 or slower, right?
Exactly. Very
and
good.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
it's all good.
great.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And for me, again, on that subject that I was telling you about Australia, for me, I was shooting a compact, which was a Sony, RX100 when they first came out, which I fell in love with that camera. And then you have, my Canon with my big rig. And I was on a mission to show people that a compact camera, you can do, I was tired of people saying, well, your pictures are only great because you're shooting that rig. And I was like, okay. So I took it, as I traveled, I took that RX with me and shot. And then I actually entered the Cannes Film Festival in Australia, and I entered the compact, and I won first place in the compact.
Wow.
And I was really proud of that, only specifically because of the fact that I was trying to show people that you can do amazing things with a camera.
But are you using still additional lighting when you're
Yes,
using
of
that?
course.
Because
Same
the lighting,
setup, yeah,
the
same
lighting
strobes.
is really important.
Yeah, it's extremely
because it's
important.
dark under there, right?
It is. It gets pretty dark pretty quick, and you're also losing color. That's really that's also the big key. Is that strobe is going to bring back, when you go scuba diving, as soon as you break that surface, you start losing reds and oranges and yellows. So the deeper you go, the less color you're going to see. But that strobe will bring out all those natural colors.
And do you always have 2 strobes?
The 2 strobes are for the wide angle setup.
Okay.
And then the 1 strobe, for me, I use a 1 strobe setup for a macro.
Is that like right on the camera?
It's right above the lens, yes.
Okay.
So
And
it's still on an arm, just above the camera.
lens. So,
Yep.
okay. See, this is all
Hey,
new
you're
to
doing
me.
great.
It's like, because Heather writes up the questions,
Yeah.
and she didn't say anything about lighting, and I was like, well, I'm mostly interested
it's-
in how the heck do you light that?
When people look at my work, again, they love the color. I mean, nature is just, you can't, that's what really draws people in. I mean, the colors are just incredible. And people ask me all the time, like, is that real? And I'm like, yes, it's real. How do you do that? And it's just, the strobes are, the strobes just bring out those beautiful natural colors.
I'm like a fanatic that everybody should learn lighting, and not just natural lighting.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, I'm an all natural light photographer, and it's like, no, you have to learn it all.
I think so. I agree.
You agree? See, we're right. All right, so let's talk about sharks.
Yeah, sure.
How the heck do you get a picture of a shark?
It's
great
a
white
lot,
shark?
It's a lot more difficult than you think, honestly. I mean,
I think it's going to be difficult.
They do not want any part of us. They're just
unless they eat you.
Again, in our field, sharks are meant to be, in my opinion, I respect them wholeheartedly, obviously, but I swim with them pretty regularly, and they're just the most beautiful.
Why don't they want anything to do with us? Because
we're just not in there. Like, they don't wake up and say, "Oh, I got to go see Craig today." They just.
But they don't think you're a seal or something.
They're pretty smart, and they really just don't want. We're just not of importance to them.
We don't taste good?
No, not really. In fact, it's funny that you say that, because when you really look at shark attacks again, and I don't want to preach, but it is very important to me when people understand something so simple as looking at shark attacks, and you realize more people are killed by soda vending machines or bumblebees or ants. I mean, more people are killed by those reasons than sharks. I mean, so it kind of boggles your mind. They're a media frenzy. If you are walking in New Hampshire and you walk into a shark's tooth, it makes front page news of, like, beachgoer. They make it so sensational. Shark bites woman out of water, and you're like, well, yeah, he wasn't even in the water. She was on the beach, and it was a piece of his tooth. And they just make it so dramatic, because it still to this day sells papers or gets people like attention, where they just have a bad rap. And when you look at the shark attacks, you look at the fact that there's mostly surfers that are in the seal population that sharks eat, and they bite this guy, and then they say they leave you alone. They don't even come back. They bite you. We're not set up to be bitten, which ends up in a bad injury, but they don't eat you. They leave you at that point. And it's pretty, I always told people, like, well, how fair is it during hunting season if I run around in a deer outfit in the middle of a field and the guy shoots me, and he's like, well, how was I supposed to know? But you're gonna hold that guy responsible. And that's exactly, literally to the point. This is a guy in a wetsuit swimming around with seals, and the shark's supposed to say, "Oh wait, no, you're not a seal. You're a surfer." So it's really quite unfair. But again,
so if you're swimming with the sharks, you're swimming with them in areas that they don't eat, but they have to eat everywhere.
Yeah, they eat. Yeah, I mean, I'm in areas where, that's what they're doing, and that's why I say they're not interested in you. They're very much about, hey, look, I'm looking for lunch, and you're just not on I don't need you whatsoever. So it's extremely difficult, because they do not swim towards you. They just kind of go about their business.
So how do you get the shot?
It's where you're in many of them. Like when you go, like, this certain place like Socorro, Mexico, is, you're talking about schools of sharks. Okay. Cocos Island in Costa Rica, I was around, 500, 600 hammerheads at a time. So you're dealing in
volume. And you're not in a cage or anything?
No.
You're just down there all by
not
by yourself.
Yeah.
you have your
in
diet,
fact,
at least.
I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to be around 500 sharks and not one of them has no interest to let me get into the literally the only shots I was able to get was when I buried myself in a rock where they would come in to get cleaned, and that's what brought them in. But you can't breathe, you can't move, you can't do anything. So they'll come up to the cleaning station, and then the little fish, the little butterfly fish go in and start cleaning them. And then you got to kind of pop out and get a shot, and then they swim away as soon as they see you. So I've been literally in where a school are coming right at me, and they just separate right before, right when they get to you. Not one of them would let me get an image. And I can get an image, I just can't get the image that I need, which is, again, to be in that 2 to 3 foot range. When you're in the 2 to 3 foot range, your contrast is correct, your clarity, because there's particles in the water, you got to get close. Your lighting only goes 2 to 3 feet, so everything is in that 2 to 3 foot zone. When you're in the 5 foot zone, it's close, but your clarity's not there, your contrast isn't really there, the images don't look and feel the way I want my viewers. And when people, again, when they look at my work, they just have a hard time understanding how clear it is, and I'm like, well,
I know, I was pretty impressed when I saw your work.
I mean, it is the separation is where I don't take the 5 foot mark as an answer. I just move on and keep going until I get into where I need to be, and it makes the world a difference. It's just, that's the part I'm most proud of, is when somebody comes and looks at my work, they'll say, you're a really good diver. If they have any idea of what it's like to be a scuba diver, they understand that I am very good with my air, I'm very good with my buoyancy, I'm very good with being a scuba diver and being comfortable where these animals will let me, it's more of a puzzle of how do you figure out how to get close to them.
And mostly you by studying their behavior is what you're saying.
Exactly.
And now, do you study their behavior? Well, you have a lot of experience and a lot of opportunity to be down
Exactly.
there. But let's say I'm a beginner. I'm a beginner diver and a beginner photographer underwater. How will I know the behaviors? Can I look it up on the internet?
You can, and then to me, it's just been it's just all experience. It's just being there and just
having a good instructor with you.
That helps a lot.
It's funny because every time I travel, I hire a local photographer to take me around, and people are like, why do you need a photographer to help you? I'm like, I don't know where to go.
No,
I mean, this is not if you come here, I'll take you into the Everglades. Joe will take you in the Everglades. We'll show you where to go,
Exactly,
if you're experienced or not. But even if you're experienced, we're still going to know, like, if you try this
areas.
setting,
Exactly.
you can get the starburst coming through the, stuff like that. It's like, why wouldn't you? Always
agree.
hire a professional. Now, do you shoot in some type of automatic setting, like aperture priority, or?
Everything for me, everything's manual.
But can
The
you
strobes
change
are
the
manual.
setting?
Yeah. The housing, when you spend the $3,500 for a housing, the reason why you're spending that kind of money is it is designed specifically for that camera. And I mean, when I say design, I mean the camera fits in there where you could basically just fit a thin slice of paper. That camera is built around the housing. So when a new camera comes out, if they're going to build a housing, you will not get a housing for that camera for 6 to 8 months. And that's because they're taking that camera and they literally build the housing around it. Wow. So every button, every function is right, there's a dial or a button that coincides with the camera itself.
So your hands, are they gloved or are they bare hands?
Yeah, just
so
bare
they're bare
hands.
hands, so it's just like you can
You're
feel
just
the
holding
buttons
two handles,
and you can turn
and you got
the
knobs and buttons just like you would on your camera.
And they're outside of the housing?
Outside, that's correct.
Oh.
So that's where, you understand a little bit more now. There's another company that makes a housing. It's a plastic housing, but they come out the next day. When a camera comes out, it's called, it's just a different brand of housing. But it's not designed around the camera. They just drill holes and make it work. Mm-hmm. So where, a button that is back here might actually be put up here because they had to realign it, So it's a cheaper housing, but a lot of people like them because as soon as the camera, of course, we're now,
Yeah, I want it now.
I want it now so they can go dive it, But my personal opinion is to wait. For me, I
money.
can't. You have, the list is there's a long list of problems and issues of, that you're dealing with as an underwater photographer.
So
the
if
last thing I want to do is try to, change my f-stop and have to reach up with my hand and figure out that the button's, not where it's supposed to be, and figure that, I don't need any other.
So you have your strobes too. Now the strobes,
Yes.
how do you change the settings
It's
on
got-
this
it's got
actually
manual
on the
settings.
strobes?
Yep, it's got manual settings.
So how do you know what you need the strobes to be? What power? Do
you're
you
gonna-
just wing it?
Everything is manual, and everything is just assessing what's going on, and you're also dealing with natural light, and you're dealing with sun.
So so let's say I'm under there and I'm doing macro, because
Yep.
that sounds like you do more of that than anything.
No, I do more wide.
Oh,
but
you do,
I do.
but your
yes.
students don't.
Yes, and the reason why macro is if you're going to train somebody, that's where they need to start.
Okay.
It's a one strobe setup as opposed to two strobes. You're going to get close because you have a little nudibranch that's sitting there. He's not swimming away. He's not going anywhere. So what are you going to do with a macro lens? You're going to get close.
Yeah.
It's natural. So all the issues that you have for wide are pretty much taken care of. Your strobe is going to work. You're going to get beautiful colors. You're going to, so macro is something that you need to start out with. And it's a much, it's in my field, it's very funny because, I have people that I teach, in a couple of weeks, you should have macro down. And they're like, I'm the best. And they're like, I'm ready. And I'm like, oh, okay, and they're like, I'm going to shoot wide. I'm going, on this trip. And then they come home and reality sets in of, how'd you do? That was not fun, It
was a little harder than they thought.
It's a tremendous jump from wide to macro. It's a no-brainer.
From macro to wide.
Yeah, from macro to wide. I'm sorry. And yeah, because there's so many more variables, and if you're not a manual person where you're depending on auto, because macro can get away. You can get away with auto, and you can get away with it's called TTL, and you kind of know TTL, right?
And
So you
TTL
can get away,
stands for through the lens,
yeah, so
and
you
that's
can get,
basically.
Yeah, so it's going to give you that good exposure. It's all happy, and you can just point and shoot, and you're going to get a pretty decent image.
Okay, so let me back up.
Sure.
Okay, so because I like to be teaching while we're talking.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you start them off in TTL and
No,
automatic?
I start them off.
You
If
start
you take my
everything
class,
manual.
yeah, you're going to
Okay.
learn photography.
So when they go down, you're starting them as macro,
That's correct.
and you're teaching them to meter on the fish, which is 2 to 3 feet away.
Well, it's going to be even close. It's going to be inches away.
Okay, inches
macro,
away.
yeah.
So they're metering.
No, it's just going to be strobe power. I already going to tell them their f-stop. Your shutter speed's pretty set.
Okay.
It's almost you're
So
not
the main-
you're on manual, but when you think about when you shoot macro, if you think about this for a second, I mean, you have a long lens. So right away, what do you think about your shutter speed, right? You want to
Fast.
max out your shutter
Yeah.
speed, right?
So your shutter speed is going to be 250 or 200.
Exactly, 250 or 160, either one.
Okay.
So compact will be 160, and even I know Olympus and these other guys with the mirrorless are, their OEMDs now are 250. They're bumping up so they're shooting at 250.
Yeah, because
now.
everybody's complaining about the
Everybody-
160.
Yeah, they want the 250, so they're getting it. So yeah,
And
shutter
then-
speed 250.
And then
Good.
you want a great depth of field.
Exactly.
So you
where
want
are
to
you going to be? 18, 22.
Really that small?
Oh, yeah. Well, you have this big old strobe like we have here. You have a strobe that's going to
Really
produce
powerful.
some power. So
So
why not?
So you tell them the camera settings, and then you tell them how to do the
Well,
strobe.
then it's a matter of just adjusting, dialing in your strobe. To
So you
be
take
right
a
where you need it.
picture, and if it's overexposed, you turn it
Yep,
down. If
exactly.
and then okay.
Yep.
Now, okay, so that's if you're doing close up because they're all going to be inches away.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about
it solves
when you're
a lot. Then
when you're going wide?
That changes everything because
Yeah.
the idea though is it's teaching them why you're shooting at f/22 and why are you shooting at the shutter speed that you're shooting, and then they are making adjustments because you are going to shoot even in macro. You are going to back up and move back. So you're going to have macro is still fish portraits, so you're still going to have bigger subjects that you're going to. So when they move back, they're going to have to adjust. I'm teaching them. You're going to have to open up. You're going to have to dial down. So, but it's teaching them to take those baby steps of I'm shooting on manual, and I'm like, you are, and be proud of that. And you're going to have to make those slight adjustments.
Okay.
Well, if you don't take that to heart, where you're not paying attention, when you go to shoot wide, then it's an uphill battle, because TTL and auto it's all out the window now. You cannot expect a camera to take in 180 degrees and pick up your natural light and your strobe and give you this great exposure. It doesn't happen.
So when you're shooting wide, do you actually meter on something?
No,
like
it's in the same, you're in that
you're
same
going to
realm.
start
Yeah,
at F18 and...
No, that's a different. I'm going to start you more like F16.
Because you need more light coming in? Is that
Well,
why?
because you're going to probably be deeper, and you don't have, the strobes only put out so much power.
So you need more light.
Yeah, you're going to need more light.
Okay. But
And
now
when
you've
you're
got two
shooting wide,
strobes.
it changes just so fast, because of the fact of you don't know where you're going to be.
Yeah.
And
So
that's-
how do you get that strobe right? Do you
That's
put
the
them on
fun part of
full
it.
blast?
Yeah, so when I teach you is when you hit that water, you basically get to the depth that you feel comfortable with and that you think you're going to, on a relative term, you're going to probably stay in that vicinity.
Uh-huh.
And then you start shooting, your dive buddy, or photographing, don't shoot them if you want to. But you photograph them, and then if you start dialing in within the first 2 minutes of your dive. You see what I'm
Okay.
saying? So
Yeah.
you're
So
test
you get
shooting.
the-
Yeah, you're test shooting the whole way, and then now the first 3 minutes of my dive is just getting settled in.
So
Strobe
as
position. Yeah, I'm taking my time. I'm looking at what I'm doing. I'm looking at my screen. I'm seeing where I am. I'm seeing where my strobes are, because if you don't have your strobes in the right position, you get this horrific thing called backscatter, and that means that in wide, if your strobes aren't in the right position, the light will light up in between your subject and the lens. Well, there's water and there's particles in there, and it'll give you a snowy effect. And this is the other fun part of wide angle, of why people, I'm like, where's your camera? And they're like, I left it down. I don't want any part of wide.
my God.
It's it is
hard.
painful. I mean, I cannot tell you how many amazing images I have that are just in the garbage, because you get so excited. It's happening quickly. You have this, incredible moment, and you think, I could just throw my strobes out here and just go. And it's not like that. And like I said, it's just a whole different, and that's why, to me, I loved the challenge. Like, I just was drawn to wide right away. Like,
I was
like,
going to say, it sounds really hard.
because I just adore abuse. I mean, it's just something
So
that I...
mostly you don't change your camera settings when you're down there, but
you are too, because now you're dealing with, do you want to let that natural light in? Do you want to expose for it? So you are constantly changing, just again, based on whether you're going to put the sun behind your subject or if the subject's going to swim the other way. Now you don't have that natural light, so now you got to open up real. So it's a constant.
And the strobes, you just take your hand and you adjust them, like,
That's correct.
to move them one way or another?
Once you get them where you need them to be.
And do they just go straight mostly?
That's what you want, yes, exactly. You want them straight out, and so what they're going to do is they go off as a V, so you want those two V's to be at your 2 foot to 3 foot mark, and that way you're not lighting up any water in between your subject. That's why you have the long arms to get them out there, and then that V is going to come to where they just match up and just hit the subject, but not light that water. So your strobe position on wide, it's just and I teach to just take your time, take that first, there could be so much going on, and it's very difficult to, again, I'm a disciplined person. I do the same things over and over again, and I just have a very high success rate, and it's because I have learned from massive trauma of being like, to travel somewhere and to put the 18-hour trip in and to get there, and you're exhausted, and then you're there to shoot, and this incredible stuff is happening in front of you, and you don't have one strobe in the right spot, and it just wipes out the whole day.
Now, are the strobes at the same power all the time?
It depends what you want to do. But mostly,
Usually?
yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
This is fascinating to me because I don't know anything about it, you know?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it is. It's a pretty cool. I really love what I do because there's still a lot to shoot, and then there's there's so many different scenarios, and it's pretty exciting.
Now, do you have a favorite spot to go to?
I do.
Are you going to share it with us?
Yeah, I mean, I've shared it with everybody. I mean, for me, I was able to go to a place. It's called Socorro, Mexico, and it's it's a wide heaven. It's got the giant Pacific mantas, big schools of tuna, big schools of sharks, big schools of lots of stuff. And I went the first time I went, and I got to have an experience that I will never forget. I was not there during humpback season, but for some strange reason, the humpbacks came in, and not only were they in, but in the 8 years of them servicing this area, the captain, I had a very long, detailed talk with him, and he tried to talk me out of, there's no need to go over there to see them because they will not let you get near them. They're, they have their brand new calves. They're very protective.
Oh.
They will not, if I drop you in, they're going to leave, and I said, yeah, let's go. And we went out there, and as soon as he dropped me in the water, they came right to me. And
they came to you?
They came to me, and the images I have from that are just, they're
Oh my
forever in my heart,
gosh.
and they're forever in my head.
You don't feel scared of the big
Oh,
animals
no.
swimming? Like they could
That
just
was
take a
there
fin
was
and they
zero-
could knock you out,
yeah,
right?
No, it was completely 100% awe. There were only, because of the captain's, he basically dissuaded a lot of people, and so basically there was me, the guy that I was diving with, and one other person in the boat. And we were basically, after the experience and after we could not swim anymore because we were snorkeling, we basically got on the boat and just cried and hugged each other. We were just so happy, and so it was so beautiful. And she was feeding off mom, and we were in the milk, and everything was just perfect. It was just one of the most amazing experiences. And I felt horrible because we were screaming and hooting and hollering, and the other 18 guests were like, "What was that?"
Oh, and they missed out.
So the next day, they did end up going out. But that night, the mom came right up to the boat and put on a whole show of breaching. And,
oh my gosh!
It was just one of the most, I wish I could relive that day. It was just one of the most. And I can thank God, through my images, I'm very, very lucky to be able to, But it was a very special time. And so Socorro is one of I've been back 3 other times, and it was a very special place.
Just always good experience there.
Yes.
Wow. And where is that? Is that
That is a place you fly into Cabo San Lucas, and then
Okay.
you get on the boat, and then it's a 28-hour trip to get out there.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Now,
It's hard because you're so excited, but then you have 28 hours to
that's
to
crazy.
figure out. Yeah.
Ugh. I love traveling when I get there, but the actual traveling part, man,
that's no
not
fun.
always that fun. So now what kind of post-processing do you do?
I use Lightroom,
Okay.
and
And that's
yeah,
it?
Yep.
No Photoshop at all?
No.
What if you get some little weird bubble? You can get it
Yeah.
on Lightroom?
Yeah,
Okay.
we laugh about that a lot because when people come into my booth during the art shows, I do make a point to let them know that there is, no Photoshop. And it's not anything other than you have to understand that I grew up on film.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm very happy when I push the button and the computer comes on. I'm like, there's a little celebration there for me every time. And that's about the extent of my, listen, if we were shooting film, I can run circles around anybody in a dark room. But those skills they're non-existent. They're just, I was really good in the dark room. I loved it. It was, 10 hours could just disappear, and I was like, what? What happened? I loved it. It was I loved the smell of the chemicals. I loved, that was where I was at home. And, so when digital came, I was already too old. So it's very, very difficult for me. So
You're not that old.
Lightroom was a challenge that I learned on my own.
I think Lightroom is a lot harder than Photoshop.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
It's just what I fell into, and again, I was at that level of that was driving me crazy because I knew I could shoot. I literally was scared of RAW, so very little post processing.
Wow.
Didn't even have Lightroom, and then somebody finally said like, why don't you come up with the times and shoot RAW? I was like, oh, that's scary, and then it was, why don't you get Lightroom and catch up to the rest of us? And from there, my images just really came together, because then I realized Lightroom is like me in the dark room.
Yeah.
It's very, very exciting to me because to me, it was that same concept. I could dodge, I could burn, I could fix those little issues. You're shooting underwater, you're shooting, fish that are reflective. You're shooting, so you have all these, there's no way you're going to get that right exposure. There's 4 different exposures in there somewhere. You have to pick the middle and get the right exposure, but you're still going to have issues. So when I started learning Lightroom, I understood like, hey, I could dodge and burn just like I could in the dark room. It really just started coming together, and I fell in love with Lightroom because of, just like photography, if we were in this small room and we all had cameras and you said to take 5 images, there's a very good chance that all 5 images that each one of us took would be different.
Right.
And I feel when I teach Lightroom, I teach it in the same way of, that's the beauty. I teach you what you can do, so that way you can edit it the way you want to edit it. I don't want to teach you my way. I want you to teach it so that you can control how you want it. And I feel the same exact way. I think if 5 people edit an image that's exactly the same image, I think you're going to get 5 completely different
we do
edits.
that. We do that on some of our workshops. We have, not all of our workshops include Photoshop type of stuff, but some do. And the last one, I did the ladies' weekend here in Naples, Florida, and I teach the same thing. Like we do, it's a little more advanced Photoshop stuff. It's like blending modes and textures and things like that. But this one lady came up with a look that I had never seen, and it was so cool. I'm like, I'm gonna copy that. So now you highly recommend shooting in RAW, it sounds like, if you've got all those different exposures, because RAW gives you more leeway, like film did.
Exactly.
You had, what, 2 stops either way in film?
Exactly.
And in Lightroom, in RAW, you do the same, right?
Yes.
Because you can't really, if you're shooting in JPEG and you're 2 stops under, you can't really.
And it's also with the fact of where you're throwing away, the information in JPEG, and then you're also looking at the fact that, the underwater stuff, the detail is what makes it so amazing. When you look and you can see the scales and you can see each scale, why would you want to throw that away? You need that, and that's why RAW is even, is just as critical for bringing out all that detail that's there. So
now we don't have a lot of time, but I'm really interested in your success as an artist.
Thank you.
Okay, because I told you I thought you have the best website I've ever seen of any artist. I really do. It's just amazing. But you have made most of your successes come from art fairs. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, being in the dive industry, you realize that it's not, when I was younger, living out of a van or living in an apartment with 20 people because you're just like, hey, it's all good. It's a different story. But when you get older and you're like, there's just, the monetary does come into play, and you're just like, it's very difficult to carve out a living in the dive industry. So I kind of more based my career. Yeah, I'd like to.
Not on the
floor
floor
I really
anymore.
Based it in the sense of how do you make a living out of something you love, and what avenue. And mine was just a complete gift, and I am so thankful to this day because I had no idea of the art world. I had no idea of how big of a circuit and how people can make a living like this. And then there was an underwater photographer that was supposed to do a show that was just being put on. So it was just a small show that she was asking for people to volunteer, and the person backed out like a week before. And so my name was, in the vicinity, came up, and she ends up calling me and saying, hey, I need you, if you'd like to, I'll give you this booth and you can present your art, show your photos and see if they sell. And I hung up and I just was like, I have no idea what I just got myself into. I had
and you probably didn't have enough
zero
work.
I had
You had to go
nothing.
get everything printed.
Was like, oh my God, I got to figure this out. I have these metal, to put a booth together. I had no idea. I mean, I was just like, okay.
And you had a week?
And we got it done, and we sold enough that I was hooked in the sense of that I was like, this is what I want to do. And it was just, I mean, it couldn't have been any clearer or any more, this was a clear line for me to be where I want to be, which is in the dive world, but not in the in my own little world of I can control myself, I can control what
And you are a full-time artist now. And your wife quit her job to work in your business as an artist. That's awesome. So that means you're making enough money.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. Well, your work is amazing.
Thank you very
so
much.
beautiful.
I really appreciate. I cannot tell you how much it means to me because it is very, to this day, it's extremely surreal for me. But I'm very appreciative of it, and I'm very appreciative of my customers, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that I sell from 11 by 14 up to 48 by 72 pieces, and
you're all metal.
I've only been aluminum since the day.
And you have a favorite lab that you were going to tell the viewers, right?
Yes, it's Shiny Prints in Jupiter, Florida, which is where I live, and
shinyprints.com.
Yep.
Okay, we'll have that.
Yeah, and I'll give you the code that they can get 30% off.
Ooh, we love discounts.
So
I'll put that all in the show notes on understandphotography.com. So what's the next adventure?
I'm leaving for Palau for 2 weeks.
And where's Palau?
Palau is in the South Pacific, so just like you're heading to Fiji or the Philippines, somewhere out there, and it was a big deal during World War II, so there's some really cool wrecks out there, and then just lots of life. It's actually, some of the dives are supposed to be some of the best in the world, so I'm really, really excited.
And are you going there to teach, or are you just going there because you want to go?
For me to produce the images for next year's season and hopefully have some really beautiful work. And then I come home from that, and then I leave 10 days later for the Sea of Cortez, where I am teaching for 2 weeks out there.
Wow. So now you don't do the art shows in the summer.
No,
that's when you do your work.
That's correct. As for me, I always, listen, school wasn't my thing, but I always was jealous of teachers. I was like, oh man, I dream about having a job that you're off for the summer. And so I work extremely hard, during September.
The art fair circuit is tough work.
It's very difficult. It's a lot more. We joke all the time about like what people don't understand, how much pain and work goes into creating it. And but we do 30 shows in that season, and it's most people who are semi crazy do 20 shows.
Yeah.
And we do 30, and we work very hard, and then from.
And do you just stay in Florida?
We do Virginia Beach is one, and then we did a show in Alabama this year.
But mostly Florida?
Yes, mostly Florida, which is
That's
another blessing.
convenient, though.
Well, Jupiter, where I live, which I was living there before, I happen to be like in the center point of like all the shows are within 2 to 3 hours.
That's
of
great.
So it's it was just very much lucky. I've been a very, very lucky.
All the things came together. And what's your website?
My website is DietrichUnderwater.com.
And Dietrich is Diet Rich.
That's correct.
DietRichUnderwater.com. Okay, because he's got the best artist website I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Not
very
kidding.
much.
So, well, thank you for being on the
You're
show.
very welcome. Thank you very
You're
much.
You're awesome. And tomorrow, 9 a.m.
Yes.
Florida Southwestern State College, Collier County campus.
Thank you. That's incredible.
Oh my gosh. Jeez, and I didn't write it down. But the website, if you want some, I don't think they have a lot of information, but the camera club is called, it's www.dippysig, D like digital, P like photography, I like imaging, hyphen, SIG for special image group, dpi-sig.org. Dippi-sig, DPI-SIG.org. But you can just show up. Just come with money if you're not a member, because it's $30. And I don't know if they take credit cards. You might need to bring a check or cash. Okay. Anyway, thanks, Craig.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for our audience for tuning in. And please tune in next Friday. I'm Peggy Farron. Thank you so much for watching episode number 92 of the Understand Photography Show. We will see you next Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you for watching the Understand Photography Show. It would help us immensely if you would click like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.